Okay, so as much as I love a good quality gameplay experience, really I do, I feel like that's something that we're missing a lot of in today's day and age. It would also be a full-faced lie to say I'm not equally as loving to just pure narrative. And I don't just mean your narrative games that are a mix of strong story with good or sometimes even great gameplay like your God of War and your Last of Us and your Uncharted and so forth. No, I mean narrative games where the true driving force of its experience are the aspects surrounding its story, meaning very little to almost no gameplay, relatively short run times, and a very high emphasis on writing, voice acting, and presentation. And a lot of you might be tempted to call these games the walking sim. These are the games like your Firewatch, your Edith Finch, and in this case, a lot of first-person horror games. And that certainly does include Still Wakes the Deep. Along with the fact that I'm just a sucker for good quality horror, Still Wakes the Deep also manages to tell such a strong, well-acted narrative with such a unique setting and beautiful presentation that the obvious issues that are present in Still Wakes the Deep, and yes, there are issues, honestly manage to fall to the wayside and don't distract from the fact that despite the issues, Still Wakes the Deep is genuinely one of the best games that we have gotten in this respective genre in a very long time. You play as Kaz McCleary, an ex-boxer slash family man who after a massive family incident finds himself running from his past to a massive oil rig. All goes smoothly until you remember that we are in fact in a horror game, so of course they drill in the wrong spot, disaster strikes via fleshy, cosmic monstrosities, and begins wiping out the crew of the oil rig one by one. Now Kaz McCleary needs to use his tools and his wits to fight for his survival, make it off the oil rig, and back to his family alive. But again, this is a horror game, so nothing is ever simple, nothing is ever easy, and happy endings are almost non-existent. But Still Wakes the Deep does such a good job with its characters that even if you know the chances are border to none, you still find yourself rooting for everyone. Well, okay, I mean for the characters that you like Kaz. Kaz, for example, is a really good character. I mean, he isn't the best gaming character of all time or anything, but his character is so well acted and layered that you really want to see him succeed, and you certainly feel his struggles and sadness when something tragic happens. You even get scared or even get genuinely heartbroken seeing all the stuff that Kaz has to go through. You actually feel for this man. I mean, Kaz is a man with flaws, but he's not really a bad person, just a man who found himself in shitty situation after shitty situation. In fact, Kaz actually has a lot going on before you even start controlling him. And seeing him change and grow as a character, admittedly in the most depressing and worst ways possible, really does help to get you endeared with his character. And like I said, the voice acting for Kaz and honestly all the characters is seriously on point. The voice acting does an incredible job of showing off the genuine emotions of each character, whether it's moments of fear or moments of real tragedy. Whenever the characters have got to sell those emotions, it seriously never misses.
Bruce, it's Kaz, where are you?
I lost O'Connor. Get on his leg.
Bruce, tell me where you are. Bruce, can you hear me?
And it also really helps that we're hearing a language and an accent that frankly I'm unfamiliar with, including the slang. Like honestly, if it wasn't for the subtitles, I admittedly would not have understood what some of these characters were like even saying. But the voice acting matched with the subtitles had me going like, oh, that's what that means? Or, oh, that's actually really cool. I didn't know that. Outside of the fact that I was genuinely entertained, I also felt like I was honestly learning something. Match that voice acting with a surprisingly strong script and writing, and you got a story that does manage to hit all the marks of a genuinely well-told story. It's endearing, it's engaging, it's mysterious, it's scary, it's packed with twists, and honest to God human drama and tragedy to match the horrors of the B era. And it also really helps that it's a very well-paced story, running at a brisk about 6 to 7 hour playthrough, and it never really slows down, giving us a pretty engaging balance of edge-of-your-seat horror and slow human moments. So thankfully, the story is in fact really strong, and believe it or not, it's not the thing that I think makes Still Wakes the Deep so masterful. At least not the only thing, right? Because we also gotta talk about the presentation of Still Wakes the Deep. I said in my why I'm buying for Still Wakes the Deep that the thing that looks like the best aspect of this game is just the look of it, the atmosphere of it. And now I can confidently say that that is still 100% true. When was the last time you saw a horror movie, show, let alone a game set on a decaying, decrepit oil rig in the middle of the North Sea? It's just such a strange yet unique place to set a horror game, and Still Wakes the Deep takes full advantage of it. It is genuinely terrifying because while it's man-made, it feels almost alien. But the fact that these areas are real, genuine threats, even without the horror of these monstrosities, is what makes it such a great location. It also helps that it looks and sounds great. The sound design per any halfway decent horror game is immaculate. From the buckling clinks of the metal, blowing of steam, and loud alarms to the more subtle sounds of your footsteps on metal grates makes you second guess every step you take, especially when you hear the screams of your crew in the distance or even behind a door. Jesus Christ, it gets me every single time. Still Wakes the Deep, as far as narrative horror goes, I'd say it's one of the strongest that we have seen in quite some time. But like all games in this genre, it falls into many of the same issues that I normally have with every game in this genre. And that's, it is still technically a game. And it just so happens that Still Wakes the Deep does in fact has some basic gameplay like puzzle solving, platforming, stealth, etc. And Still Wakes the Deep's gameplay is genuinely just decent, passable, a distraction from the story of the game. But honestly, even though it's decent, I can still say that I've played better narrative-focused horror games that do actively play better than Still Wakes the Deep. Like, easily the worst aspect of gameplay in Still Wakes the Deep is the platforming. Ironically, other narrative-focused horror games like Soma, the Amnesia series, Layers of Fear, etc., they all had a lack of platforming with a bigger focus on exploration and puzzles. Now see, I respect Still Wakes the Deep for going against the grain, trying something different, right? You always have my respect for doing that. But yeah, this platforming just ain't it. It's not fun. It's not really enjoyable. This is the type of platforming that's not very tight, and with the camera being really confusing, it can lead to a lot of difficulties with gauging a jump to a platform or a ladder, or shuffling on walls, or even figuring out where exactly you're supposed to go, and that can lead to a lot of unintentional deaths. And then you got the stealth sections, obviously the staple of these type of games, and in Still Wakes the Deep, once again, it is only okay. It's clearly just something that is meant to be a bit of a palate cleanser between the actual story. Now, don't get me wrong, they are, of course, pretty nerve-wracking at first. I mean, obviously, since you're being stalked by your ex-crew members turned fleshy, nasty monstrosities. But as the game gets going, you notice just how much the game holds your hand in these regards. I mean, it gives you places to hide and items to throw to help distract them and such. But I only rarely had to use these. And even when I did, it just made the encounters even easier. All of this to say that the margins for error in this game became very clear very early on. And even worse is once you learn to recognize that margin of error, the monsters in the game kind of begin to lower in fear factor. Not too much, okay? Because even though the monsters didn't scare me as much as they did in the beginning, the monsters in this game still kind of got to me. I mean, I'd be a bullshit liar if I said any of the chase sequences in this game didn't freak me out, because they did. The designs of the monsters, which are absolutely disgusting, the fact that they're your old crew members, adding in some tragedy, and just the fucking music of it all. Point is that even though the game does start to scare you a little less, there are still points in this game where it is still pretty damn terrifying. There is really just one other problem with Still Wakes the Deep, and it's lack of replay value. Now, look, I get it that a lot of these type of games are not meant to be played multiple times. It's supposed to be a one and done game. Still Wakes the Deep's world was so cool that I just wish that there was something, anything I could go back for, just so I can go back in that world for just a little while longer. But then again, if you really fuck with the story, you can just replay that a second time. I really wouldn't blame you. Again, that is the biggest strength of this game. That is what this game really has going for it. Yes, would it have been nice if this game maybe just shook it up a little, maybe added some smoother gameplay, some better replay value? Yes, of course it would have. I have seen other narrative-focused horror games do just that, so I know the Chinese Room definitely could have done it too. But like I said, when it comes to games like this that are clearly trying to focus and succeed on one aspect and one aspect only, I really try to objectively look at the game for what it offered instead of what it could be. And for what it is, Still Wakes the Deep is one of the best narrative horror games I've seen in quite a while. Is it the best? Absolutely not. I can definitely think of a couple others that are better, but if you really think about the last time we had a quality first-person narrative horror game, I really can't think that far back. At the very least, I can't think of one as good as Still Wakes the Deep. Still Wakes the Deep is not winning any Game of the Year awards. That much is clear. But like I said, you look at the game for what it is instead of what it could have been. And Still Wakes the Deep does in fact give horror lovers and story lovers a well-acted, gripping, visually stunning 6 to 8 hour emotional roller coaster that does a great job balancing the tragedy and the horror. And despite it being rough in the gameplay, it won't distract you too much from the clear quality and passion that the Chinese Room put into crafting Still Wakes the Deep. Now, if you're not a fan of narrative horror games, I really don't think this is going to win you over. But if you're in the mood for a relatively short, one and done, heart-pounding and heartbreaking experience, well, you can honestly do a lot worse than Still Wakes the Deep. Because like I said, this is truly some masterful narrative horror. And that was my review on Still Wakes the Deep. Thank you guys so much for watching. And as for my next review, I'll be honest, it's either going to be Black Myth Wukong or Astrobot. Both of those games are fucking incredible. I'll keep you posted, of course. If you enjoy the videos I make, like and subscribe. It helps a ton. If you want to keep up to date with what I'm doing and playing, then follow me on Instagram. That's @TheGamerCritic. Be good people, and I will talk to you guys soon. All right, peace.